Hello and welcome to the Old Garage number 30. I'm Wild Bill and we have a few questions. We've got some silliness and a cool shout out I know you'll like. So let's get on with the questions. And the first couple questions came from the episode on utility vehicles, the special from a while back. And first name, last name asks, why were high wheels with such high wheels? Okay, fair enough. Well, first of all, when you're dealing with utility vehicles, you're dealing with vehicles that have to go places where there isn't necessarily a road, or if there is one, it's not always maintained. And so therefore they have to have enough clearance between the wheels to get anywhere. This was actually very common in just standard automobiles in the United States, Canada, and Australia, all the way through to 1910 and even into beginning of World War I. Because of the road situations there. If you have wagon trails, you know, you've got these two big ruts with a big mound of nonsense in the middle of them, and so you've got to be able to clear whatever is there. And so that's why they had the high wheels with such high wheels. It was just they've got to be able to get across terrain, and until the development of, you know, the continuous track, you know, aka, you know, Holt and such, then you had to have big wheels to do it. And they still do, for that matter. So, there we go. Now, also from the same episode, I had a question from James MacArthur, and his question is, you mentioned a number of manufacturers of utility vehicles. What, in your opinion, were the best of the vintage era? Oh, that's not as easy as it sounds to answer, because with utility vehicles, these are vehicles that are built or heavily modified for specific purposes. And so there's the gamut of different industries that would need utility vehicles, and likewise a gamut of companies that would build them. Now, you know, for example, you know, if you want to talk about heavy mining equipment of the era, I mean, I'd say Thornycroft in England was, you know, particularly good at that. If you're looking at municipal utility vehicles, you know, such as your police cars, your ambulances, mail trucks and such, you know, there you could look at Renault, you could look at Peugeot, Vauxhall, Ford, you know, they're all good at that. And, you know, then there's also, you know, your farming and your other, you know, public works vehicles, you know, for like, you know, like steamrollers and such. And for them, I'd say probably Advance was one of the best. Holt Caterpillar, you know, also in that area, you know, was very good at what they did. And there were a lot of different companies doing similar things at the same time, but I'd say those were really the best at it. As, you know, other opinions, go ahead and put them in the comments. So, okay. Now, from the Harry Stutz episode, I had this question also from James MacArthur. It says, I cannot remember if you answered this question already or not. If you had to boil down all the influencers and great men of the automotive world in the vintage era, who would be the 5 biggest or most important? Oh, this took a lot of thought and discussion. My wife and I spent probably a good hour just talking about this topic, because it's not that easy to really answer, because there's so many. You know, you've got, I mean, Amédée Boulay, Leon Serpollet, you know, Frederick Lanchester, Henry Ford. I mean, there's so many. And so what I did, and my wife and I discussing, was say, okay, well, based on the parameters of this question, who would I say would be the top 5 people that were the most influential to the automotive industry, to the extent that what they did is still felt to this day? And even that was hard to do. But here we go. Here's going to be my top 5, and I'm going to do them in reverse order. Number 5, Bertha Benz. Now, she, well, through her husband, invented the brake liner and the granny gear on the transmission, but more importantly, what Bertha Benz did in 1888 was put the automobile in the public eye. Nobody had done that before. When she made that road trip, and some almost 70 miles, and the press were involved, everybody was. I mean, this was a major, deal. This made headline news across Europe and even in the United States, and it made the automobile something to be seen in the consciousness of the world population. She accomplished that. She is the one who said, look, cars can be used as a mode of transportation here. I'm going to do it. And then, the press, this is this is August of 1888 that she's doing this. And had she not done that, there's a good chance that automobiles may not have been much of a display, at the Paris Exposition of 1889. What she did for the industry on a worldwide level is, I think, critically important. And so she gets my number 5 spot. Number 4, oh boy, another one hard to pick, but I'm going with Albert de Dion. Now, the reason here is, again, what he did to the international automotive world. And that is he created this sport of auto racing. It all boils down to him. He's the one that came up with the rules of racing, established the first racing authority. He's the one that worked out with the press and everything to make auto racing, a thing, and more importantly, to bring it to the public eye, to bring it to the media, and to make people even that much more interested in automobiles. His influence is substantial, and many of the rules that he came up with, back in the 1890s still exist in road racing to this day. So yeah, Albert de Dion. I mean, inventions, he wasn't an inventor. I mean, he had a couple of toy makers doing those, but nonetheless, I think that his role in the early automotive industry was absolutely critical. Albert de Dion gets spot number 4. Okay, number 3. Another one. Again, I struggled with all of these. I really did. But number 3 is going to be Carl Benz. Yes, the husband of Bertha, but nonetheless, he is the man that built the first automobile that historians can all pretty much agree, yeah, this is a car. It's got an internal combustion engine, it's got transmission, it's got rack and pinion steering, it's got brakes. This is a car, and he built it. And although he wasn't himself able to sell them, it actually took his wife to make that happen, but he still built that foundation that really is the genesis of all cars. So he gets my number 3 spot. That's Carl Benz. Number 2, okay. Again, this was not an easy choice, but here it goes. This is going to be Emile Levasseur. This man was a race driver as well. In fact, he raced against Albert de Dion a couple times. He was unfortunately killed as the result of injuries from a race. Yet he was the man who arguably created the first modern car. Emile Levasseur came up with the whole idea of the engine in front, drivetrain down the middle, driving the rear wheels. He came up with the steering wheel. That was his invention. I know I've seen comments saying, oh, this guy invented the steering wheel. That guy invented it. No, Emile Levasseur invented it. And not only that, he created the first true sliding pinion manual transmission, which is the basis of all transmissions anymore. His influence in the automotive industry is felt to this day. He was the builder of the first modern car and the designer of it. As a result of his death, I mean, his partner, Panhard, actually created the Panhard rod, to make cars more stable on the road. But yeah, Emile Levasseur, number 2, he gets that spot. Number 1, Who was the most important, influential person ever in the history of automobiles? And in my opinion, that is Nicholas Otto. He's the man that came up with the four-stroke engine, which is the engine that powered all gas-powered cars from the very beginning. I mean, there were a few, two-strokes, but it was his engine, and still is his engine, that powers the automotive world, unless you drive a Tesla. That Nicholas Otto's influence in the automotive industry is of such impact that were it not for him, there would never have been an automotive industry. He was that important, and so I give him the #1 spot. So there you go. Okay, now it's that was the questions, so it's time for some silliness. And okay, so what we're gonna do for silliness? Well, today I decided I would give you another top 5. And this is my personal top 5 picks for my favorite songs about cars. Okay? Favorite songs about cars. And so at number 5 is going to be Get Out and Under by Billy Murray. This is a funny song about what it's like to drive, in your pre-World War I, vehicles, and just everything, braking and the road problems, especially, I mean, he was in America, and roads in America were, a travesty. And I love that song, and so that's my number 5. Number 4 songs about cars and about driving cars. Transfusion by Nervous Norvis. This is a funny song. It is about driving too fast. It was actually kind of like a public relations type of thing done by the Department of Transportation with this particular artist to do a song, telling, young teenagers in their hot rods to slow down, don't drive so darn fast. And that's what the song was about, and it's funny. I always liked it, and so my number 4 spot, Transfusion. Okay, number 3, I know on a list like this, if I don't include Beach Boys, I'd be hung. So, in my opinion, my favorite is the Little Deuce Coupe of the Beach Boys. They did a lot of songs, Run a Little Honda, 409, etc. But Little Deuce Coupe, I liked it because it really spoke to the hot rodders of the 60s, because the Deuce Coupes is what they were using, those, the mid-1930s cars, whether they be Ford, Chevys, Dodges, whatever, to make into their, their speedy little roadsters of the time. And so I like Little Deuce Coupe. I think it encapsulates kind of that culture in the time. So that's my number 2. Okay, my number 3 rather. Number 2, okay. Making Love in a Subaru by the Damascus. Making Love in a Subaru. Yeah, I remember that song. And I guess why this is a personal favorite for me is because when I was in high school, I had a friend of mine that had a Subaru. And unlike me, he was a popular guy, good looking, and all the girls liked him. And some of the things that are in that song, actually, he went through. I didn't, because I never drove his car, but he talked about some of the problems. And so, yeah, Making Love in a Subaru by Damascus. I'm sorry, but yeah. Okay, but my number 1 favorite song. This is going to be, I'm going back to Billy Murray, and it's The Little Ford Rambled Right Along. Oh, I love this tune. It is so funny. If it runs out of gas, fill it with soap. It'll still run. And all of the differences between the guy with the big limousine who's just stuck, whereas, you can't stop a Model T. I think the song dates from like 1915, I think. And so it's just so funny in how he's showing the difference between, the big luxury car versus here's a Model T, here's the little Ford, and yet it's going to get the job done, whereas what good's your limousine? I love that tune. So, okay, that's the silliness, but we do have a shout out today. Okay, get ready to buy a car. Okay, or at least look at one that you're going to enjoy, because there's this chap out in England, and here's his channel. It is Robin Lawton Vintage and Classic Cars. Now, if you have not checked out this channel, go check it out, because He's got custody of all kinds of these beautiful vintage cars and classic cars, mostly British and European. But you got to check him out. You know, he'll drives them, he'll walk you through them, show you the car. You know, the videos are short because he is interested in selling them, but you're going to see some really beautiful cars on his channel. So go check out Robin Lawton and enjoy checking out some really cool cars. All right. So that's what we had for the Old Garage number 30. And so we'll see you next time. Peace.